C9C got the fucking juice.
Silk is the new gold.
Chris is shit sick.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT. Glad that you guys are tuned in to this episode this afternoon. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Hope we can make up for it with what we have in store for this show, man. Deshaun Watson, once again, has some more legal issues arising, and he also has a burner account, and it isn't confirmed if it is 100% his, but I mean, let's be honest, who is spending any time out of their lives defending Deshaun Watson? You feel me? So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this alleged burner account that he has. Jacksonville had a really ugly loss to the Dolphins in week 1, and I feel Doug Pederson's days are numbered. I just think the Jaguars need to go ahead and fire this dude because he's holding back Trevor Lawrence and he's holding back this team from reaching the next level. Is the Steelers' success sustainable with Justin Fields at quarterback, or should they make the change to Russell Wilson once he gets healthy? Lamar Jackson is being held back by his coaching staff. I'm going to explain a little bit why. And we got to break down a couple of marquee matchups for week 3 of the college football season. We got Texas A&M traveling to the Swamp to take on Florida, Alabama versus Wisconsin, LSU versus South Carolina. So I'm going to be giving my breakdowns and predictions for those games. And Colorado fans, they keep making excuses for Deion Sanders' poor coaching. So we once again got to talk about that. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in, wherever you're watching, YouTube, X. Do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, follow us so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. Remember that we are not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Follow us on Instagram at JT_Sports_ and on X at JT_Sports__. Shout out to my guy M Sparks. He says Pittsburgh Steelers for life. Shout out to you. Shout out to my guy K Roan with the $4.99 donation. He says powerful JT Sports Live. Appreciate the donation, my guy K Roan, and everybody that supports the channel. Before we dive into this episode, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Aura. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important that you protect yourself From data brokers who sell your personal information online to scammers, spammers, and anybody else who may want to target you. That's why you should use Aura, today's sponsor of this episode. Aura shows which data brokers are passing away your information on the internet and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. Go to aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to get a 14-day free trial and protect your personal information from being exposed online. Cleaning up your information online not only helps reduce the amount of spam you receive, but it also protects you from hackers who could use this info to help gain access into your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Go to our sponsor aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to gain access to your 14-day free trial and protect yourself from hackers looking to gain access into your sensitive information online. All right, everyone, let's get into it. So once again, Deshaun Watson has some more legal issues arising. He had a sexual assault case when he was messing around with a lot of masseuses. He ended up settling those legal issues not too long ago. But he once again has another lawsuit that's been filed against him. And this is stemming from a completely different situation. It's similar to the lawsuits he had with the masseuses, but it kind of comes from something that isn't pertaining to that. And the Cleveland Browns, the NFL, they aren't about to punish him yet. They're about to let the legal process do its thing. But not only does Deshaun have another lawsuit that he's going up against, but allegedly he has a burner account. So let me introduce you guys to this Leroy Bickerstaff dude, aka Deshaun Watson's burner. Now, it's not 100% confirmed if this is indeed Deshaun Watson, but I mean, let's be honest. Who is dedicating any time out of their personal life to defend Deshaun Watson? He's a crappy person, and he's a crappy quarterback too. So, I mean, you just got to be a dedicated fan of Deshaun Watson to just be going to war with critics of him on X. So, you got this first post by Leroy Bickerstaff that says, if Foe had a tackle like Trent Williams, he'll be able to show his greatness. Foe can't succeed when he got no chance back there. That's funny because Joe Flacco last year behind this same offensive line took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs last season. But let's continue. When we go to the replies, when he's responding to the critics, you got this post by Cleveland One and HQ that says, love seeing all the fake Browns fans already write this team off. We're going to be just fine with the 100 emoji. Deshaun Watson, Leroy Bickerstaff replies, someone gets it. One game ain't nothing. Just wait till the O-line and the play call stop holding back Foe from his greatness. Then he responds to another tweet. 10 penalties on the offense alone yesterday. 1 ineligible downfield offensive lineman on the RPO, 2 false starts, 2 holding calls, 2 illegal shifts, 3 illegal formations. Our guy Deshaun says, yup, but we're going to come on here and blame Foe when it's the offense as a whole. Give Foe no chance at success when he's backed up like this every time. And then he clapped back at our guy, Dan Orlovsky. Dan Orlovsky says, the quarterback is a problem in Cleveland. I would be thinking long and hard about Jameis Winston and moving him to be my starting quarterback. I agree with this, Dan Orlovsky, 110%. Who wouldn't after how bad Deshaun Watson played against the Cowboys on Sunday? But our guy Leroy Bickerstaff comes to DW for his defense. He says, come on, man. There's more than life than football. People go through shit all the time off the field, but after one game, we gonna let a dude that ran through the back of the end zone tell us 4 is not the answer? Come on, hey, I'm gonna be honest. He got him with that one. That was a pretty good one. I mean, Dan Orlovsky, despite playing in the NFL, how credible is he when it comes to giving analysis when he ran in the back of the end zone? I mean, that's pretty embarrassing. He's the last one who should be criticizing full, right? Our guy Jerome Ford called Deshaun Watson a warrior for how he looked against the Cowboys. And, of course, our guy Leroy says, Foe got the respect of his teammates, and that's all that matters. Nobody cares what the fools on this app got to say about a man they don't know. That's a little bit hypocritical, ain't it? Because his Leroy Bickerstaff, a.k.a. Deshaun Watson, cares so much about what these fools on X got to say to the point where he has to create a burner account to defend himself. And then there's another tweet he responded to about Jerome Ford saying the same thing. It was an extended quote. Jerome Ford said, Deshaun Watson's leadership in the huddle, he was a warrior, hand bleeding, even when we're down. Just seeing him work, seeing him fight for those extra yards, it just shows you what kind of guy he is. Does it really? Because, I mean, stemming from all these lawsuits that Deshaun's dealing with, it doesn't seem like he's that great of a guy. But our guy Leroy, he says, guys in the locker room got Ford's back all day long. It's y'all that never played the sport, that don't know fool like that, coming on him and blaming Ford for not succeeding in an impossible situation. Are you sure about this, Leroy Bickerstaff? Because for this to be an impossible situation, Joe Flacco was doing miracles with it last season. This is a perfect ball that was dropped. Y'all got to stop this madness. Of course, he says, and we still going to sit here and act like Ford still don't got it. Pressured on damn near every drive back, and Ford still standing in there and delivering dots in the fourth. If that ain't hard, I don't know what it is. Listen, this is obviously Deshaun Watson. Okay, and it's not 100% confirmed that it is him, but I'm pretty confident that it is, because who is taking this much time out of their day to defend the dude that has all these legal issues going on for sexual misconduct? And I'm not saying that he's guilty of these things, but it's a numbers game. You feel me? You don't get all these lawsuits against you without being some kind of guilty. You feel me? It's just a numbers game. Not saying that he's guilty, but I'm just saying, when you got like 25 sexual assault cases against you, I do think that at least 3 or 4 of them have some merit to him. He was involved in doing some kind of wrongdoing. And our guy, Stephen A. Smith, says, I'm not saying they're a horrible team, but the Browns might have a horrible quarterback. And of course, Leroy claps back at Deshaun Watson's defense saying, at Stephen A. Smith never played the sport in his life, but always wanted to talk like he one of the ones, always saying whatever will get clicks instead of speaking the facts. What are the facts? I mean, Deshaun Watson played like garbage. Those are the facts to me. And then this is the last one. Halftime. The Cleveland Browns post the halftime score. Dallas up 20-3. And of course, somebody had to say, all right, Deshaun, get your you-know-what off Twitter and get in the film room, or does Newsom have a table at Barley tonight? Don't know what he was trying to say with that tweet, but he claps back Leroy and says, you don't know me, fool. Go make a frozen meal or something. Look, man, I hope this ain't Deshaun Watson, because he's going outside right now. You got all these lawsuits against you coming out, and instead of worrying about them, you're worrying about trying to defend yourself from critics on X. The Cleveland Browns had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL last year, despite all the injuries that they dealt with, due to how good their offensive line coach at the time, Bill Callahan, was. He's now with the Tennessee Titans. So, of course, the old line was going to regress just a little bit. But A lot of those sacks Deshaun Watson took were on him because he was holding the ball too long. He was trying to make things happen when he doesn't have the athletic ability like what he used to have in Houston to make guys miss. And at this point, Cleveland seriously needs to consider benching him in favor of Jameis Winston. Jameis gives the Browns a better shot at being a playoff team this year than what Deshaun Watson does. He's been there for a while. They completely got rid of last year's coaching staff to appease him and get the most out of him. But he just isn't what he used to be. And you got to judge people for who they are and not what they used to be. What Deshaun used to be was the elite quarterback. What he is now is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. When the Browns made the decision to move on from Baker Mayfield and try to find an upgrade, there was nothing wrong with that. I understand that. If you want to be able to be a Super Bowl contender consistently, you got to have high-level quarterback play. And even though Baker is doing his thing with the Buccaneers, he's still not a championship caliber quarterback. So it made sense for the Browns to try to find the upgrade. The only problem is, they took a huge swing trading for Deshaun Watson, and it turns out to be a huge miss with how bad this dude is and all the off-the-field shit that he's involved in. And with this burner page, I just laugh at it because it reminds me of when Kevin Durant had a burner page and he got called out for it. He got caught, and now he doesn't have it anymore. He just defends himself on his personal page. If you're Deshaun, everybody knows this is most likely you, so you might as well just defend yourself on your own personal page. Nobody's going to get mad at you for defending yourself. You're a human. Just because you're a football player doesn't mean that you don't have feelings too. You got a right to defend yourself. If you're going to defend yourself, you might as well do it on your main page. Why do it on the burner page? When everybody already knows that it's you, the secret's out, you might as well go ahead and start clapping back on your main page. Leroy Bickerstaff, yeah, this is definitely a real person, not named Deshaun Watson. This just sounds like a fake page. You feel me? It's like Leroy Bickerstaff. Is there even a Leroy Bickerstaff that exists in real life? The chances of that name being real gotta be 1 out of a million. But Deshaun Watson, he has legal troubles going on again, facing another sexual assault lawsuit, and he gets caught up with having a burner page. The hits just keep coming for foe. The Jaguars had a meltdown against the Miami Dolphins. They were up 14-0 at one point during this game, and then they just completely fell apart thanks to Doug Pederson having crappy play calling. He went for it on 4th and 1 on his own side of the field, doesn't get it, and then it ultimately led to the Dolphins winning the game because they just got all the momentum at that point. And I feel like Jacksonville needs to move on from Doug Pederson. He was good for getting Trevor Lawrence to play better than what he did his rookie season, helping Jacksonville win the AFC South, make it to the playoffs, win a wild card game in comeback fashion against the Chargers. But Jacksonville has peaked with Doug Pederson as the head coach. It's time for them to move on because the same mistakes that got Doug Pederson fired in Philadelphia, he continues to make in Jacksonville. He can't help Trevor reach that next level. Trevor kind of has plateaued under Doug Pederson because when he's healthy and he's at his best, he's a top 12 quarterback. But when he was drafted number 1 overall a few years back coming out of Clemson, he was supposed to be just as good as what Patrick Mahomes is right now, or a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the game. And with him unable to reach that level, you got to point the finger at Doug Pederson. Last year, Press Taylor was calling the plays. That was a disaster. We still don't know who's calling the plays this year. It could be Press, it could be Doug, but no matter who it is, both of them have to go. The offense is not clicking at the level that they should with the kind of talent that they have on this team. Is the offensive line bad? Yes, but whose fault is that? You got to blame the coaching. The wide receivers are pretty good. You got Big Play Gabe. You got Brian Thomas Jr., who's an absolute monster. Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne. There is more than enough weapons for Trevor Lawrence to have a great season. There's no reason why Trevor Lawrence should be putting up the numbers that he did week 1 against the Miami Dolphins. I'm tired of Doug Pederson. Don't know how many of you Jaguar fans have the same feelings as me towards him, but his days are numbered. Sean Khan is at a point now where he believes that Jacksonville is no longer a poverty franchise anymore. He thinks that they've done more than enough to be able to make a deep playoff run and to be Super Bowl contenders. And I would love if the Jaguars were to fire Doug Pederson, because it looks like we and Duval are once again in store for another 9-8 season. And when that happens, you might as well fire Doug Pederson and go after the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. If there was ever a guy who could get Trevor Lawrence to the level that he was expected to play at when he was drafted number 1 overall, it's Ben Johnson. This dude is the best offensive coordinator in the game right now. He's probably the best offensive coordinator that we've seen in the NFL in the last 4 to 5 years. And I view him the same way that people view Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay when they were offensive coordinators. He has elite play calling skills. He knows how to maximize his personnel. He's really creative with his play callings as well. He just has a better understanding of offense than what Doug Pederson seems to have at this point of his coaching career. It's kind of like Doug Pederson has become outdated and he doesn't know how to adjust. And we saw this same issue get him fired in Philadelphia with Press Taylor calling the plays and not working out. And now with him, taking back over play calling duties somewhat, it still isn't looking any better for him than what it did last year. And last year, you should have gotten fired after you had a chance at getting the 1 seed during the first half of the season. You were arguably the best team in this conference. Then Trevor Lawrence gets a little bit dinged up. And then all of a sudden, this guy just falls on Jacksonville's season and they miss out on the playoffs. But Sean Khan is a patient owner. He's given Doug Pederson enough time to where you got to start producing the results. And Doug Pederson isn't doing that. I had money on Jacksonville beating Miami. And instead of being able to walk away 1-0, they have a nasty meltdown due to Doug Pederson's stupid play calling, his dumbass decision making, and it cost Jacksonville what should have been a week 1 W. And now it's time for Jacksonville to clean house. Just go ahead, fire him and Press Taylor. You can keep Liam Nelson because the defense played really well against one of the NFL's most explosive offenses last year. He can stay, but everybody else has to go. Doug Pederson is not a bad coach, but he's not a great coach. And he's one of those coaches that when you hire him, he can get you to a certain point, which is being a wild card team. But once you get to that level, you can't get any further than that. And he is a former Super Bowl champion head coach, but Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl in the past with Aaron Rodgers, and he hasn't come close to winning one since. So at this point, Jacksonville, it would be in their best interest to just go ahead and give Doug Pederson and Press Taylor their walk-in papers and go ahead and go after Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, because I really believe that he could get Trevor Lawrence to that next level. Right now, Trevor Lawrence is here when he needs to be here. He should be playing at an MVP level. And Doug Pederson isn't the coach to be able to get that kind of performance out of T-Law, which is why Jacksonville needs to make a change. Jacksonville is only going to go as far as what Trevor Lawrence can take him. And for Trevor to play at a high level, he needs better coaching than what he's getting right now out of Doug Pede and Press Taylor. Appreciate everything that they've done for Jacksonville, kind of putting the Jaguars franchise on the map as far as a national perspective, getting them primetime games, getting them to the playoffs, winning the AFC South Division title for the first time in a while. I respect what Doug Pederson and Press Taylor have done, but they're kind of like expired milk now, where they're stale, they're spoiled. It's time to just empty that thing out in the sink and throw the rest of the canteen in the trash because it's over. It's just expired. It's not working out anymore. Jacksonville needs to go in a different direction when it comes to this coaching staff. So even though Justin Fields led the Steelers to a Week 1 win over the Atlanta Falcons, there is still a large majority of this fan base that is still clamoring from... Start that over. I ain't like how we started that. Despite Justin Fields leading the Steelers to a Week 1 win over the Atlanta Falcons, there is still a good amount of this fan base that still wants to see Russell Wilson be the starting quarterback. Why are people so infatuated with Russell Wilson? This dude is not good anymore. He's washed. If he was good enough, he would have played in Week 1 despite the injury. Because how you view your starter when they're injured is that, yeah, they may not be 100%, but an 80%, 75% version of them is still better than your backup. The fact that Russell Wilson is probably going to miss Week 2 against the Denver Broncos kind of shows you everything you need to know about how Mike Tomlin and the rest of this team feel about Justin Fields as the starter. They feel he gives Pittsburgh the best chance to win. He played pretty well against Atlanta. Did he have a couple of throws that he missed? Yes. But this was probably one of the more efficient performances that Justin Fields has had in his career. 17 of 23 passing, 156 yards through the air, and he had 57 rushing yards, 4.1 yards per carry. Justin Fields had a major role in the success that the Steelers were able to have on the ground against a pretty good Falcons defense. And Russell Wilson, if you start him, he doesn't bring you anything better than what you're currently getting out of Justin Fields. He's not a better passer than Justin Fields. If anything, they're on the same level. And secondly, he's not the runner or the athlete that Justin Fields is. With Justin Fields, the Steelers have a better shot at making it to the playoffs due to how he can still make things happen when things break down with the pass protection. He can turn what should be a negative play into a positive play. And also, he makes your ground game more dynamic. Look at how Arthur Smith was utilizing Justin Fields with design quarterback runs, read options, power runs with him. It opens up the playbook a lot more when you have a quarterback that is dynamic as what Justin Fields is running the football. And Pittsburgh, the focal point of this year's offense is to pound the rock. They don't need Justin Fields to throw for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and over 30 pass attempts to win games. They want to rely on their defense to win. And as long as Justin Fields can take care of the football and help Pittsburgh put points on the scoreboard, that's all that matters. Last year, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky, they struggled to even get the Steelers' offense past the 50-yard line. So I'll take hella field goals in a win over what the Steelers got last year at quarterback. Last year, Kenny Pickett didn't even throw the football more than 5-6 yards downfield. Justin Fields averaged 9.2 yards per pass attempt in this game. He took shots downfield. He was aggressive in certain moments, and he took care of the football. That was the biggest knock on him with the Bears. And the fourth quarter of games, he choked away wins. Caleb Williams didn't look better than anything we saw out of Justin Fields last year. Justin Fields in Week 1 outplayed the dude who the Bears brought in to replace him. And the Steelers are 1-0 right now. Why can't we be happy with getting a win? Why do we still have to try to see what we have in Russell Wilson? We don't have anything in Russell Wilson. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Steelers are winning games offensively due to how good they are at running the football and asking Justin Fields to only throw the ball when necessary, and he's getting the job done. I get that if you can do better, you do better, but going from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson is not doing better. It's doing worse. The dude is 35 years old. He still is battling a lingering calf injury that he sustained early during training camp. Father Time has caught up to Russ. He's no longer the quarterback that he used to be. We don't need to see Russ if the Steelers are going to overachieve once again this year, it's going to be because of Justin Fields, not because of Grandpa Russell. Russell Wilson is in the perfect situation for him right now, calling in those plays on the sidelines and coaching up Justin Fields when he makes a mistake. The only thing I would like to see Justin Fields improve at is getting better with receiving the snap underneath center. That's about it. Justin Fields played pretty good against Atlanta. And with how good he is on the ground, he brings a different element to this Steelers offense that you don't get with Russell Wilson. When you put in Russell Wilson, the offense changes. You're not running design quarterback runs anymore. You're just handing the football off to the backs, and it makes your offense more predictable. With Justin Fields, there's a sense of unpredictability with this offense because you don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to hand the football off to Najee or Jalen Warren? Or are they going to run it with Justin Fields? Or are they going to throw it downfield? Grandpa Russ is done. We don't need to see what Russell Wilson has. We saw what Russell Wilson had last year. Those stats don't mean anything because the Broncos still kicked them to the curb for the NFL's largest dead cap hit in history. We don't need to see what he has. He needs to keep doing what he's doing. Have those shoulder pads on the sidelines and keep calling in those plays. He's good where he's at on the sideline. Justin Fields has won over this team. When you look at him in the huddle, his teammates respect him. They play hard for him. They relate to him more than they do Russell Wilson. I don't get why Steeler Nation is somewhat still unsatisfied with what we're getting out of the quarterback position compared to what we had last year. You're not getting an upgrade in Russell Wilson. And I really just hope we get an opportunity to see Russell Wilson play this year just so I can tell y'all, I told you so. The dude's not good anymore. We're better off with Justin Fields. Let's keep moving on. I saw John Harbaugh say something that really concerned me, and it's the main reason why I can't pick the Ravens to make it to the Super Bowl this year. This Ravens coaching staff is holding back Lamar Jackson. Why? Look at what John Harbaugh just said about getting Derrick Henry. He said they didn't get Derrick Henry to give him 30 carries a game. So if you didn't get Derrick Henry to wear down defenses, then what was the use of signing him for? If you're just going to give King Henry 10 touches, you might as well have just re-signed Dalvin Cook in free agency if that was the point. Because what has made Derrick Henry one of the best running backs in the NFL over the past decade is that this dude is a freight train. He wears you down over the course of the game. From the first quarter to the fourth quarter, your defense gets tired of tackling this monster of a man. And you're doing yourself a disservice when you only give somebody like Derrick Henry 10 touches because he's not wearing out the defense. And this is why I feel the Ravens coaching staff is holding back Lamar Jackson, because it seems like they don't have any idea of how to maximize the talent that they have with LJ and to give LJ a good enough coaching staff to help take Baltimore to the Super Bowl. The main reason why John Harbaugh still has a job is because Lamar Jackson saved him from getting fired his rookie season. Before Lamar Jackson took over as QB1 in Baltimore, John Harbaugh was on the hot seat. Yeah, he won the Super Bowl. He beat his brother. But outside of that, they had a lot of disappointing seasons when they didn't do much in the postseason or they didn't make it to the playoffs at all. So John Harbaugh's job definitely was on the line until Lamar Jackson came in and saved them. And if it wasn't for Lamar, John Harbaugh probably wouldn't be the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens right now, which is why Lamar Jackson deserves better. He deserves a coaching staff that isn't going to overly rely on him to win games. Like, what's the point of giving Derrick Henry 30 carries? What's the point of giving Derrick Henry only 10 carries, but you're going to make Lamar Jackson your leading rusher? Make this make sense to me. Why is Lamar Jackson running the football more than Derrick Henry? Lamar should only be running the football when he has to. When you got a tank like Derrick Henry in the backfield, there's no need to have to run Lamar 15, 20 plus times a game. This coaching staff continues to confuse me because once again, they're holding back Lamar Jackson because you get this talented running back in Derrick Henry who's going to be a future Hall of Famer. He's going to get a gold jacket, but you're not going to utilize him to his full capabilities. You're only going to give him 10 carries a game? What kind of sense does that make? What has made Derrick Henry so great is that you get tired of tackling that 250-pound monster every play for 4 quarters. And you kind of take away his effectiveness when you sparingly use him in short yardage situations. He should be the RB1 for the majority of drives that the Ravens offense is on the field. We shouldn't see Justice Hill on the last play of the game blocking Chris Jones. What kind of sense does that make? I was surprised that Justice Hill was even able to put a block on Chris Jones or at least keep him from getting to Lamar. Shout out to him and shout out to the effort. But that just shows you the lack of good coaching that Lamar Jackson has to deal with down in Baltimore. In the last play of the game against Kansas City, Justice Hill is blocking Chris Jones. What kind of sense does that make? And you mean to tell me that this coaching staff isn't the problem? Look what they did in the AFC Conference Championship. They only gave the ball to the running backs 5 times combined in that game. That's unacceptable. The offensive line is crappy. Whose fault is that? The coaching. You can't put all of the Ravens' shortcomings on LJ when this coaching staff is more responsible of Baltimore's inability to get to the Super Bowl and raise up that Lombardi than what Lamar Jackson is, because he's getting held back by a coaching staff that continues to underutilize their personnel. You sign Derrick Henry. You don't want to run him 30 times a game. You don't want to run him 20 times a game. You only want to give him 8, 10 carries throughout the game. What kind of sense does that make? Derrick Henry still has a lot of juice left in the tank. He's a Hall of Fame caliber level. You have to ignore. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player. You have to ignore his age. Just because he's 30 doesn't mean that he's washed up. Hall of Fame level players regress at a slower rate than your average player. If you got a running back like Ezekiel Elliott that's up there in age, then yeah. Because he's not a Hall of Fame caliber player. But Hall of Fame caliber players can play at a higher level for a lot longer than the others at their position. That's what makes them future gold jacket players, because they're better than the majority of the other players at their position. That's what separates them. That's what makes them special. They got more longevity. They can play more years in their prime than what you normally see out of guys at their position. And for Derrick Henry, even though he's 30 years old, he still has at least 1 or 2 prime seasons left, despite being 30 years of age. Something that you don't see out of most running backs. When most running backs get to 30, their play starts to decline. But for Derrick Henry, with him being a Hall of Fame level player, his decline isn't going to come until he gets to 33 years old, because he still has a few more years of high level play left in the tank. So for Baltimore, I just hope after this season, they either part ways with John Harbaugh or this dude just retires, because I don't think Lamar Jackson is ever going to win a Super Bowl with John Harbaugh as his head coach, man. The fact that he came out and made these comments, we didn't get Derrick Henry to give him 30 touches a game, makes no sense to me, because that is what makes Derrick Henry so special. And this is why Lamar Jackson can't get over the hump. Andy Reid is an all-time great head coach. John Harbaugh is a good coach, but he's no Andy Reid. And if you want to make it further in the playoffs, you need to have a head coach that knows how to get the most out of the players on his team. John Harbaugh doesn't seem to be able to do that. let's move on to some college football. LSU versus South Carolina. LSU is currently a 7-point favorite going into this game. And what's really fascinating about this matchup is that you got an LSU offense that's really explosive. And you got a top 10 offensive line with 2 offensive tackles that are going to be playing in the NFL next year. They're going to be future first-round picks. Left tackle Will Campbell is probably the best offensive tackle in the country. And right tackle Emory Jones Jr. isn't too far away from him as well. Garrett Nussmeier is a tough quarterback, handles pressure really well, has a really good arm. You got dynamic wide receivers and Kyron Lacey. You also got tight end Mason Taylor. But you're going up against a South Carolina defense that is really formidable, especially with what they have on their defensive line. And a matchup that you need to look out for in this game is South Carolina's true freshman pass rusher, Dylan Stewart, who already has 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 games up to this point in his career. And this dude was just playing in high school last year. And this dude is an insane athlete. He's like Jadeveon Clowney reincarnated. Well, he's going to be going head up against offensive tackle Will Campbell on that left side. They also have a couple of other really good edge rushers. They got a lot of depth on the interior of their D-line. So with the athletic ability that South Carolina possesses with their front 7 and on that D-line, they can get pressure by either rushing for or sending the house when they want to send extra guys with the blitz. And they also got a secondary that's pretty experienced. And as a defense, the Gamecocks have forced 6 turnovers in the span of only 2 games. I don't see this being a cakewalk for LSU due to the lack of consistency that South Carolina's offense has at being able to sustain drives and put points on the board. This is a defensive team, and the defense is going to carry the way for South Carolina for this season until we see more out of Lenore Sellers. And the good thing is, for Lenore Sellers, still being fairly young into his career, he has a lot of room to grow, and it seems like he's getting better every game. Against Old Dominion, outside of what he was doing on the ground, he didn't really look too impressive throwing the football. Against Kentucky, he had a couple of big throws that he made, but still wasn't really that good. But with him having Rocket Sanders in the backfield and a pretty decent group of wide receivers, South Carolina has the ability to get big plays and crucial moments of the game. And this is a big play-dependent offense. They're not efficient. They only convert on third downs 28.57% of the time. That's currently one of the worst in college football. And they only average 3.9 yards per play. So that shows you that this is an offense in South Carolina that they may not be efficient, but they do have the ability to generate big plays and certain moments during the game to still put enough points on the board to make this a close game. And against Kentucky, what blew that game open was how dominant their defensive line is. This is probably one of the better defensive lines that LSU is going to face all season. South Carolina's coaching staff has been raving about the talent that they've had on this defensive line all off season. They believe that this is the best defensive line that this program has had in recent memory, and they're going to get tested against the top 10 offensive line in LSU. And if they meet that challenge, they got a great chance of being able to win this game due to them having home field advantage as well. And Shane Beamer is no slouch as a head coach. Some of y'all seem to forget what the Beamer boys did the last month of 2022 when they beat Tennessee, ended their playoff hopes, ended Hendon Hooker's Heisman bid as well. And then the following week, they crashed Clemson. The Beamer boys are not one of those squads that you want to overlook just because you have to perceive talent advantage. And I got concerns about LSU's defense still. Yeah, South Carolina offensively isn't that great. Their offensive line has struggled. Lenore Sellers is a good runner, but he's not that good of a passer. Well, LSU's defense, are they going to be able to slow down South Carolina's run game? We've yet to see Rocket Sanders go off. We know how good Rocket Sanders is. He's been one of the best running backs in the SEC for the last 2 years. And LSU's defense still hasn't shown me enough to the point where they can be trusted to just completely neutralize South Carolina's rushing attack in this game. Yeah, you do have Harold Perkins, and he should have a monster performance with him going up against a poor offensive line. He's a cyborg. I'm still very high on Harold Perkins. I still perceive him to be a future first-round pick if he declares for the draft next year. Defensive coordinator Blake Baker, who they got from Missouri during this offseason, his defense still has a lot of work that they have to do. With how they played against Nicholls State in the first half, Nicholls State had 2 7-minute drives, and they were able to hold their own when it came to time possession. So if Nicholls State is moving the ball against your defense and you're allowing 20 points against them, there's a path to South Carolina offensively being able to stay in this game with how they can run this football against a very questionable LSU defense. So the team I'm going to take to win this game, I like South Carolina with the upset. As absurd as that may sound, LSU doesn't have the ability offensively to run the football. And that's going to hurt them in this game because they're going to be too predictable. South Carolina is not one of those teams that you're just going to dice up through the air. We know that they have a formidable pass rush. And regardless of how good your offensive line is, South Carolina's defensive line is going to get back there at some points during this game due to the lack of unpredictability LSU's going to have in their play calling. When you know a team's going to throw the football every down, they can't run it against you, it allows those pass rushers to pin their ears back and to really just go all out at getting after the quarterback. And with the kind of freaks that South Carolina possesses on that D-line, regardless of how good these tackles are, somebody's going to end up breaking loose, getting a big hit on Garrett Nussmeier, and that could be the difference in South Carolina winning this game, because let's say it's late in the fourth quarter. They are in a 4th down situation late, and they need to get LSU off the field to get the ball back to their offense to win. I trust South Carolina's pass rush to get home at Nussmeier. This is a really good defense that South Carolina has this year. They are experienced at all levels. And with the kind of freaks that they are possessing, like this true freshman that they have, and Dylan Stewart, you know, I'm pretty confident that South Carolina's pass rush is going to be able to work LSU's offensive line, regardless of how good they are, because when you're one-dimensional and you don't have the ability to play complementary football, you can have good receivers like Kyron Lacey, you can have a good tight end in Mason Taylor, but it doesn't matter when Garrett Nussmeier doesn't have all day to throw the ball. And this is not an offensive line that I see being able to keep him clean for the entirety of this game. They're going to get home in certain situations. So that's why I'm taking South Carolina to get the win. 24-20 is my final score prediction for this game. Give me the Gamecocks at home. Another game I want to talk about, Alabama takes a rare trip up to Madison, Wisconsin to take on Luke Fickell's Badgers. They are a 16-point favorite going into this game. ESPN's FPI Football Power Index gives them a 92% chance of winning this thing. For Alabama, you have an elite ground game. You're averaging 6 yards per carry, 264 rushing yards per game. You got Jam Miller, Justice Haynes. These are really phenomenal running backs. And this is probably the most talent that Bama has had in a running back room since they had Jahmyr Gibbs. Both of these dudes have incredible vision, great contact balance, and Jalen Milroe, with his athleticism, he also makes Alabama's rushing attack one of the best in college football. Wisconsin, they haven't looked good against Western Michigan and South Dakota in their first 2 games. They did win those games, but style points do matter. And when you watch those performances, you know, they weren't extremely dominant on the defensive end of things. You know, their defense did their part and helping them get big stops in the second half, but offensively, they were less to be desired. And when you're going up against an Alabama offense that has the ability to run the football, I question with how Wisconsin's defense looked in these last 2 weeks if they're going to be able to slow down this rushing attack. Because if they can, you love their chances of pulling off this upset. Jalen Milroe, as talented as he is with the ball in his hands, with how strong of an arm he has, and with how accurately he's able to throw the deep ball, it makes this offense really tough to stop. But where you can get Alabama's offense in trouble is when you can take away the big plays in the deep passing game, and you can slow down that rushing attack, and you force Jalen Milroe to have to beat you by throwing the football in the short middle areas of the field. That's not Jalen Milroe's strength. He's not a quarterback that's just going to pick apart your defense like a Garrett Nussmeier or a Jackson Dart. He doesn't really have it up here yet. He's still working on that. And with this being fairly early into the season, and you know that Alabama has a lot of explosive wide receivers, like they got this true freshman wideout named Ryan Williams, who's only 17 years old. He has 3 touchdowns off 6 receptions, and he's averaging over 30 yards per catch. If you can limit the big plays that Alabama can generate downfield in this vertical passing game, you got a really good chance of being able to keep this a one-possession game for the majority of this matchup. Alabama is not a team that can just consistently pick apart your defense by throwing the football, because Jalen Milroe isn't as accurate as he is throwing the football downfield when he's asked to throw the football in the short intermediate areas of this field. Wisconsin has enough talent defensively where their secondary, they can hang around and be able to limit those explosive plays that this wide receiving core can generate. Their secondary isn't bad. Their defense isn't bad. From a talent standpoint, I like what Wisconsin has. They got a couple of nice pass rushers. They got a couple of solid corners and solid guys on the back end of that secondary. It just all comes down to if you can make Jalen Milroe beat you by having to be an accurate quarterback in between the numbers. That's where he struggles at. For Wisconsin offensively, you're going up against a really powerful defensive line. Alabama's D-line, they're really strong, they're really physical, but Wisconsin normally always has a pretty good offensive line. And I feel the best part of the country to get good offensive line from comes from where Wisconsin is. Up there in that part of the country, it's cold outside. You got the offensive linemen that listen to AC/DC. They're outside, not working in the gym, but they're doing workouts in the woods, getting splinters on their hands because they're pushing logs around. Wisconsin offensively, with their offensive line, I think they can be able to handle themselves up front against Alabama's D-line. And Alabama, it's not like they're going up against a Wisconsin team that's lacking playmakers. They got some pretty good running backs and some pretty good wide receivers that are pretty good after the catch. All you need is for Tyler Van Dyke to be able to get the ball in these wide receivers' hands and these running backs' hands when they're coming out of the backfield, because Tyler Van Dyke has been really inconsistent throughout his collegiate career. And I'm a Miami fan, so I'm pretty familiar with the kind of player that Tyler Van Dyke is. When he's on, you're going to be good enough to win the majority of your games. And if he has a game where he starts out hot against Alabama, you love your chances of pulling off the upset, because that's the only way this is going to happen. You're going to need Tyler Van Dyke to be on his A game. He has a good arm. He makes pretty good decisions with the football when you get him in rhythm early. So look for Luke Fickell and his coaching staff to try to ease Tyler Van Dyke into this game. They haven't really had to ask him to do too much against Western Michigan and South Dakota, but he didn't really look too great in those games. Well, they're going to need him to look great against Bama, because this is not going to be a game that you're going to win without asking Tyler Van Dyke to throw the football more than 30-plus times. So you're going to need him to get in rhythm early so he can have that confidence moving forward from the first quarter all throughout the final 15 minutes of this game. Now, ultimately, when you think about these two teams and you think about these two programs, Wisconsin has always been one of those programs where at their best, they're a consistent 10-win program. But with Luke Fickell, you're hoping that you can get into the college football playoffs with it now being expanded to 12 teams and that you can have the ability to compete for a national championship every 2-3 years, because Wisconsin isn't one of those teams that consistently recruits good enough to be able to sustain having a 10-win season. But with what they have this year, you know, you got a pretty experienced defense. You return 71% of your defensive production from last year. Your offense has some pretty talented skill position guys. As long as you can get some competent quarterback play out of Tyler Van Dyke, you got a chance to hang around in the majority of games that you have on your schedule. But it's going to be hard for you to hang around in this game against Alabama with just how dynamic their run game is and how good their offensive line is. And I don't think Wisconsin has enough talent to be able to hang around with this Crimson Tide team, especially when you got Kalen DeBoer as the head coach. So I'm going to take Alabama to win this game outright, and I'm going to take them to cover that -16 spread that they're favored to win by. Give me the Tide. 34-14 is my final score prediction for this game. The last game I want to break down, Texas A&M travels to the Swamp to take on the Florida Gators. They are a 3.5-point favorite going into this matchup, and the fight for survival begins for Billy Napier. We're in the meat and potatoes of Florida's tough schedule, and if he wants to save his job, he can't afford to lose this game, because if you lose this game, I really believe Florida has no choice but to fire him, because you can allow him to risk losing to another in-state powerhouse in UCF. If you go 0-2 against Miami and UCF, that would be detrimental to the perception of Florida's football program, because if you're a recruit, why would you want to play for a school that is 0-2 against the other big-time programs in the Sunshine State? You know, this is a must-win game for Billy Napier, and he's running the two-quarterback system. DJ Lagway balled out against Sanford as expected. Graham Mertz is expected to play in this game. He's getting cleared from concussion protocol. And with you having a 2 QB system, it kind of puts you at a disadvantage and gives you an advantage at the same time. The disadvantage is when you're rotating in 2 quarterbacks, it's hard for either one of them to get into a rhythm, because when you're a quarterback, sometimes you don't end up starting off hot right away. Sometimes it takes you a couple of drives to get heated up. And it's hard to get a good chemistry and a good feel for your teammates when you're getting swapped in and out of the lineup every possession. But the benefit is that for Texas A&M, it's hard to game plan for 2 different quarterbacks, because both of these guys have different skill sets. Graham Mertz is a more accurate passer and between the numbers, but DJ Lagway is more athletic, and Florida has more big play potential with him in that quarterback. And also, he's a bigger factor on the ground than what you get with Graham Mertz. So it makes it hard to game plan for, because you don't really know what to expect from either one of these guys, and it kind of helps out Billy Napier in terms of his play calling, which has been heavily scrutinized, because with you having 2 different quarterbacks, you can find ways to get creative with both of these guys and try to call plays to the benefit of what these 2 dudes do best. And for DJ Lagway right now, I feel like he's really good as a runner, but he's also pretty good when you can utilize him on play action once you get the ground game going. For Graham Mertz, he's a rhythmatic passer. He's pretty accurate when he can get the ball out fast, has a little bit of protection up front. He can do some nice things. And Florida does have some really good wide receivers and running backs. I think Florida's skill position on offense is better than what Texas A&M has on wide receiver and at running back. And Florida's offensive line has a very tough task going up against a very scary and formidable Texas A&M front. We saw how much carnage that this Texas A&M defensive line was dealing out to Notre Dame's offensive line. And with how good Texas A&M is defensively, because not only do they have a really good D-line, but they got a pretty good secondary. For a guy like DJ Lagway, you're not playing against Sanford. You're going up against a faster, more aggressive and physical defense. So how is he going to adjust to the speed that he's going to see from this A&M defense compared to the speed of Sanford's defense? It is going to be a little bit of an adjustment period for him. And another thing that Florida has that concerns me is their third down offense is the worst in college football. And I'm not saying that as an opinion. That's a fact. They are 128th in the nation in third down conversion percentage. They only convert on third downs 11.11% of the time. That's awful. And it's hard to win a lot of games when you can't sustain drives offensively, because when you get in these third down situations, these extend the drives. And when you consistently get shut down on third down, unless you're on the side of the field when you're able to go for it, you put your defense on the field for way more plays than what they need to be, and they get worn out and tired out a lot faster. Texas A&M, the good thing about you playing them at home in the Swamp is that this was an offense that didn't look good against Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame does have one of the best defenses in the nation in terms of the talent that they have up front and how good their secondary is. But at the same time, you know, a lot is to be made of Connor Wigman right now, because I thought this dude was going to be a really good quarterback. I was not expecting him to look as bad as what he did against Notre Dame. Now, I get that he was coming off an injury last year. Maybe he was a little bit rusty. Well, we're going to see just how truly good Connor Wigman is in this game. And for Florida, if your defense truly has taken that next step in the second season under defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong, Connor Wigman should look as bad as what he did against Notre Dame. Now, maybe he plays a little bit better, but maybe you have the opportunities to come away with a couple of key interceptions that could flip this game in your direction. And also, you got a defensive line that is going up against a questionable Texas A&M offensive line. One of the biggest concerns about Texas A&M going into this season was how productive the big boys up front were going to be at opening up holes in the run lane and pass protection. So I think for Florida, this is a game that you definitely have a great shot at being able to win. And the big focal point for Florida, with this being a run-first team due to the talent they got at running back, and with you having DJ Lagway at quarterback, you should be able to take advantage of a really porous run defense that Texas A&M has had to start this season. They average over 198 rushing yards per game allowed. So for Florida, you're licking your chops, because that's what Billy Napier loves to do the most. He loves to get the football to Montrell Johnson and the other talented running backs that he has on his team, and that's going to allow you to win the time possession battle, and that's going to allow you to tire out a really athletic and aggressive Texas A&M front. Ultimately, I'm going with Texas A&M to win this game. Okay, and look, DJ Lagway, he could be good, but he has to prove it in this game. And the fact that you're running a two-quarterback system shows me that you still don't know what to do with your quarterback position. They say if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have one at all. You're going up against a really well-coached football team led by Mike Elko. He was the head coach at Duke last year. And remember, Duke week 1 last season, they blew out Clemson. And if he can do that with inferior talent and having limited resources at Duke, imagine what he can do at Texas A&M. And although you are going to have the home field advantage playing in the Swamp, ultimately, I don't trust Billy Napier enough as a head coach to be able to win this game. Although I do feel that Florida has the slightly more talented team in this game, they're at a disadvantage with their coaching staff. Any game you go into, you're always going to be at a disadvantage when Billy Napier, aka Sunbelt Billy, is your head coach. And DJ Lagway, he may be the savior of Florida football, but you're putting too much on his shoulders if you're asking him to save your job. This is not an ideal situation for DJ Lackway to have a great performance. When have you ever seen a true freshman flourish when they've had a head coach on the hot seat? A head coach that's in jeopardy of losing his job. The true freshman quarterbacks that play well are the ones that got stability. They got a coaching staff that they know is going to be there for a while, and a coaching staff that is trustworthy enough where they can put that true freshman in the proper situations to succeed, i.e. Dylan Raiola right now with Nebraska and Matt Rule. You can't say the same for Billy Napier. DJ Lackway, as talented as what he is, the play calling gets called out every single week. So how can we trust Billy Napier in this game if he does utilize DJ Lackway a lot to call plays to help maximize what Lackway does best? Can't trust that. So I'm going to take Texas A&M to win. 27-17 is the final score that I have for this game. I'm taking the Aggies on the road in the swamp. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to my guy M Sparks. Shout out to my guy King Malik. He says, well, that was experience. Should have shown up against Miami. You couldn't have figured out cover one man all game, bro. Sit down. My guy Robert Turner says, I'm going to shut up and listen to JT. My guy King Malik also says Connor and Mertz on the same level. Caleb Williams. If you haven't already, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're listening on X. Give us a follow. Retweet the stream if you haven't already. And let's keep moving on. I want to go back to the NFL. The New York Jets had an ugly loss on Monday night to the 49ers. 32-19 was the final score. But there's no need to panic if you're a Jets fan, because your next 4 games should be automatic wins. You're going up against the Tennessee Titans, the Patriots, the Broncos, and the Vikings. These are probably the 4 worst teams that you're going to play all season. You easily should be able to be 4-1 going into your big division matchup against the Buffalo Bills. And you got enough talent where you should be able to compete and go toe-to-toe with Buffalo to the point where you could win both games in the season series, or you could split with Buffalo. Aaron Rodgers, he didn't look washed up to me. I thought Aaron Rodgers looked pretty good. It's like the dude didn't play football in over the span of a year or two. So, of course, he wasn't going to be able to pick up where he left off when he last won MVP a few years back, but that was to be expected. For Aaron Rodgers to not play in the preseason and to miss all of last year pretty much but 3 plays, I thought he looked pretty good. This is week 1 as he continues to build rapport and better chemistry with his offensive line and receivers. I expect his play to pick up. Aaron Rodgers still had moments where he had those vintage throws. We saw when the 49ers got called for a defensive penalty and he threw a dot to Adam Lazard for a touchdown. So there still were moments where you saw that vintage Aaron Rodgers that the Jets envisioned getting when they traded for him a few years back. And the offensive line, I felt, had some moments where they held up well in pass protection. You got Garrett Wilson, you got Breece Hall, the Alan Lazard finally has arisen. There were people who wanted Alan Lazard cut. They thought he was a bad free agency signing. Well, it's like Aaron Rodgers wanted to tell you to go get a dude if he wasn't going to get him involved. So I don't really have as many concerns with the New York Jets personnel nor their coaching staff with Aaron Rodgers being healthy, because this team is only going to go as far as what Aaron Rodgers takes them. Now, I do know that the Jets defense was uncharacteristically bad against the 49ers. Like, they scored damn near every single possession they had the ball offensively, but that's probably the worst performance that you're going to see out of the Jets this year. Robert Saleh, you can question how good he is as a head coach, but we know that he's one of the premier defensive minds in the game. He normally has a consistently elite defense year in and year out. And after you play the Buffalo Bills, you play the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New England Patriots, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Indianapolis Colts. 3 out of 4 of those teams have inconsistent offenses. You don't know what you're going to get out of Pittsburgh offensively. You know that they most likely, at best, are probably only going to get the 24 points max. You love your ability, if you are the Jets, defensively to slow down the Steelers' offense, with that being a run-heavy team. The New England Patriots, they sucked. That win that they got week 1 against Cincinnati was fluke. It's week 1. You know, weird stuff happens early into the season. The Arizona Cardinals are going to be feisty. You know, Kyler Murray, the little midget that they got back there, he's a difficult quarterback to stop. And with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. and the other receivers they have, that's not going to be an easy win for you. But defensively, with Arizona having a bad offensive line, the New York Jets should be able to take advantage of that, and that should help them take control of that game and eventually win it. And the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson is going to be up and down this season. So depending on how well he looks that night is going to drastically affect the chances the Jets have at winning that game. But this easily should be a 7-3, 8-2 team as we approach the midway point of this season. I would be incredibly shocked if the New York Jets go into week 10 and they're a 5-4 football team. They don't have a tough schedule. They're going up against a lot of teams that probably won't make it to the playoffs this year and don't have a quarterback as good as what Aaron Rodgers is. And last year, you were in close games against Kansas City with Zach Wilson, for crying out loud. Imagine how many of those close games you would have won if Aaron Rodgers was fully healthy. There's no reason to panic about the New York Jets' bad opening game that they had against the 49ers, because we know the 49ers are a good team. Although you would like to win that game to have momentum going into week 2. You know, Tennessee has Will Levis at quarterback. I love the Jets to win that one. That's one of my best bets of this week. So if you're a Jets fan, you just need to cool out and relax. I get it's week 1. You probably expected a better performance with Aaron Rodgers coming back, but you knew he was going to be a little bit rusty. You know, and the defense obviously has some issues on their D-line, but thankfully, your next 4 or 5 games are against teams that don't have potent offenses. They don't really have proven quarterbacks that are good. So you should be able to win these next couple of games. You get into the month of October, you're 4-1 going up against the Buffalo Bills. And then if you can split with them, then, you know, you could set yourself up where you're going into the mid portion of this year and you're right smack dab in contention to get the number 1 seed in the AFC. So I'm still high on the New York Jets. I don't view this team as a Super Bowl contender. They just got way too much going on from a coaching staff standpoint with the whole Aaron Rodgers standpoint, where I don't think they got enough to make a deep playoff run. To make a deep playoff run, everybody has to be balled in. It has to be one team, one goal. I don't think they're well coached or buttoned up enough to go deep in the playoffs, but I do believe that they're good enough to win 10 games and possibly win the AFC East division this year over the Buffalo Bills, who they have their own concerns with how bad their defense looked against Arizona. The last thing I want to talk about is this. Colorado fans keep making excuses for Deion Sanders' poor coaching. And look, I'm not a Colorado hater, and I don't get how people can call me a Colorado hater when I'm one of the few people on this platform that actually put money on this team to win the Big 12 championship. I'm not a hater. I'm just a disappointed supporter because I expected more out of this team. This team has too much talent at wide receiver, and they brought in too much talent from the transfer portal to play the way they've had the first couple of weeks into this season. I expected this team to look vastly improved this year compared to what they were last year. And you can only bring in so many players from the transfer portal until you got to point the finger at the coaching for not being able to get the most out of these guys and being able to develop them to reach their full potential. Jordan Seaton was the number 1 offensive tackle in last year's recruiting class. He shouldn't look as bad as what he did against Nebraska. That's on the coaching. When you have negative yards after the first quarter like you did against Nebraska, that's on coaching because you didn't look prepared in that game. And as much as I love Deion Sanders, I'm assessing Colorado based off what I see on the field. And what I see on the field is nothing to praise. People call you a Deion hater and a racist when you're not holding water for him. I'm not finna put no knee pads on and put no pom-poms on for a dude that right now doesn't look qualified to be coaching at a Power 4 level in college football. When you're coaching at this high of a level, you're not coaching in the SWAC anymore. You can't just beat teams because you can out-talent them. You can out-roster them. You have to be able to beat teams that have just as good as a roster as what you have and also have good coaching to go along with it. Pat Shurmur is not a good offensive coordinator. He's a downgrade from what you had last year and the dude in Sean Lewis who was calling the plays. The thing with Pat Shurmur is that everywhere he's been in the NFL where he's called plays, the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, he's gotten fired. Why would you think that a dude who's gotten fired at nearly every job that he's gotten in the NFL is going to be able to all of a sudden help this offense click? And I really believe that Deion Sanders is the dude who's running this offense. This offense doesn't have no creativity to it. It's predictable. You can't run the football because your offensive line can't open up holes in the run game and able to do so. And as talented as what your receivers are, when you don't send them in motion like that, and you're not able to get creative with your route concepts, you become a predictable football team. And what Colorado is predictable. Colorado State, I don't think they're going to lose to them. But I wouldn't be surprised if they are in another close game like they were against North Dakota State. Anytime there's a big point spread against Colorado, I'm betting against them. I'm not betting against them to lose, but I'm not going to bet against them to cover a point spread that's this large, being 9.5, 10 points. Because they're not a good enough team right now to be able to blow out teams that they should blow out, despite the talent advantage that they may have. The only thing that looks better about this year's iteration of Colorado is that their defense actually has the ability to get stops. Last year, you had to pray to the football gods that Colorado could get a stop defensively. And their defensive line, their pass rush, does have moments where they're consistently able to get after the quarterback. In the second half, they played really well against Nebraska. But overall, from a team standpoint, this isn't a team. This looks like a bunch of individuals that Deion Sanders just got from the transfer portal. And you can't say that Deion Sanders doesn't deserve to get criticized when this team still looks as bad as what it did last year. And he supposedly improved this team with guys that he handpicked on the offensive line. You see, I believe that Deion Sanders is in over his head and that he doesn't know what he's doing as a head coach because instead of coaching these guys, he thinks that the answer is we just need to go and get better players. How many better players can you get until you look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm not doing a good job of putting these dudes in situations to succeed? You see, being a head coach is like being a chess player. The better chess player you are, the better you are at positioning your pawns on the board to take the opposing player's pieces. You see, with Deion Sanders, his mindset is, if I just have a lot of queens and kings, I can automatically win the game. And that's not how it works at this level in college football. In the SWAC, you can do that. But in the Big 12, you can't. And I was coming into the season, for all you guys who are calling me a hater, with the assumption that Colorado was the most talented team in this conference, because I really don't believe there's a big gap between Colorado and the rest of the other teams in the Big 12. So I get a little bit upset when people come on here and they call me a hater and act like I'm just supposed to suck up the Deion and excuse piss poor performance like what we saw out of Nebraska. That's a disappointment. It's a disappointment to the people that are invested in this program emotionally, that spend their hard-earned cash on merchandise, put money in Deion Sanders, Deion Sanders, and everybody else's pockets, go to the games, and they get the result that they got against a team that they annihilated last year. You know, if they lose to Colorado State, you're going to have no choice but to accept the truth about Deion Sanders. You can like Deion Sanders and be a fan, but you can criticize him at the same time. It doesn't make you a hater. It can make you disappointed. And that's where my criticism with Deion comes from. It doesn't come from hate. It comes from me being disappointed because this team should be playing better than what they have the first couple of weeks into this season. And if you call me holding this team up to a higher standard a hater, then I don't know what to tell you. You just have your pom-poms and your knee pads on, and you're just guzzling up Deion. And that's cool if you want to do that. You feel me? No offense to you, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to expect this team to at least look like an 8-9 win team. And based off how they looked against Nebraska and NDSU, they don't look like a team that's even going to win 6 games in my eyes right now. Until the offensive line plays better and we see more creativity from Pat Shurmur as a play caller, I'm going to continue to criticize this team because they're underperforming. They're not living up to expectations. Your excuse can't be, well, Nebraska's a better team. What's going to be your excuse if Deion Sanders goes 4-8 or worse this year? Oh, the teams Colorado just played are better? No, that's bullshit. Colorado has one of the best receiving corps in college football. All 4 of their wide receivers that are starting are going to be playing on Sundays next year. Deion Sanders is a first-round talent. I don't care about the character concerns. I think the character concerns are mildly overblown. And I got a homeboy that actually plays for Colorado. He's actually a walk-on. And he says that what they report about Deion Sanders and Deion Sanders mostly is untrue. But there are some criticisms that are pretty fair. And the coaching has to be better. You can't have bad clock management where you have less than 20 seconds on the clock to go until halftime and you wait until 10 seconds to call a timeout. That's on coaching. Everything isn't hate. Some things you can actually see that are factual if you watch these games. Y'all just wanted that Deion's black, and with him being the Black King, you get offended when people have criticism of him, when the criticism isn't rooted out of hate. Why is it that every Colorado fan is trying to make it seem like when you criticize Deion, you're trying to start a race war? I'm not trying to start a race war. What I'm trying to say is that Deion is not the perfect coach that a lot of y'all people perceive him to be. And he will admit that himself. He says it after nearly every press conference. I got to be better. Well, where are we going to start seeing Deion look better as a coach? Because I expect more out of this team than what we've seen these first couple of weeks. And if me holding this team to a high standard is me being a hater, then I really got nothing to say to you. Because this should be an 8-9 win team. If you're okay with this being a 4 or 5 win program again and Deion continue to get hated on by people in the media, then that's okay with me. But, I kind of do get a little bit upset when I see Colorado perform the way they do against Nebraska and NDSU, and you got people coming at me saying, oh, you overhyped this team. I get a little bit upset when I see people push false narratives about Deion Sanders, and I would love for him to prove them wrong, but so far he's proven them right with how Colorado has looked so far this season. And I hope that Deion Sanders can turn around because I do have some good money on them winning the Big 12 championship. So when I come on here and criticize Deion, it's not rooted out of hate. It's rooted out of disappointment because I expect more out of this team with the improvements that they made from the transfer portal. This should not be the same team that we saw last year because it makes me ask, what were you doing all this offseason? You knew that the offensive line was the biggest issue on last year's team, so why is it still the biggest issue on this year's team? You had all offseason to improve this offensive line, and yet it's still terrible. What is your offensive line coach doing? What is Pat Shurmur doing with the schemes and the protections? Why is Dallin Hayden not getting more touches? There are a lot of questions that I have about Colorado football that Deion seems to not have the answer for. And after every press conference, he always says, if we knew the answer, we would have been figured it out. Well, that just shows you the concerns about Deion as a head coach. He doesn't really know what he's doing, because if we are asking you, how are you going to fix this? How are you going to fix that? And you continuously say, I don't have an answer, which is the same thing that you said last year. It shows that if you don't have an answer, you don't know what you're doing to fix it. So therefore, you're kind of incompetent as a head coach. Does it make sense? Because it makes perfect sense to me. If you knew the answer, you would have been fixed it. Well, find the damn answer, Deion. Figure it out. You're going to let your son continue to get crushed back there and be and be dog food to opposing defenses. Like, every defense, every team that plays Colorado, they want to knock Deion Sanders' helmet off his damn shoulder pads. You know that, right, Coach Prime? You know that with the more you talk and the more Deion Sanders talks, the more of a target you become. Yeah, every team treats you as their Super Bowl because they have so much disdain for you to the point where they want to embarrass you. And I really believe that your defense did play well in the second half, because if we saw that defense play the same way they did in the first half, Nebraska would have beat you by 70. So the defense does look improved, but the rest of the team doesn't. And it's a major disappointment for what could be. Imagine if Colorado had an average offensive line. They would be undefeated right now. They would be good enough to win the Big 12. I'm just saying, like, I expect more out of Colorado. I expect more out of the recruiting. This is Deion Sanders. He doesn't have to make visits everywhere to recruit. It's Deion Sanders. Most of the times when he ends up calling recruits' parents, their grandma, their auntie, their mom, they know who Deion Sanders is. A lot of these parents don't know who Kirby Smart is. A lot of these parents don't know who Ryan Day is. Deion Sanders is one of the most popular athletes in the history of sports. So the recruiting should be a lot better than what it is right now. Colorado has probably the worst recruiting class right now in the Big 12. That's unacceptable. You know, there are a lot of issues with Colorado football that people just want to sweep underneath the rug. And it's kind of the same issues that these same people that continue to say you're a Deion hater tell you about HBCUs. That's kind of a conversation for a different day. But, you know, there's a lot of HBCUs that are not good. But, you know, the people that graduated from these HBCUs like Bethune-Cookman and whatnot, they don't want you to call out the issues. They just want you to praise how good that HBCU is. And I don't want to make this a racial thing, but that's kind of what Colorado fans do when you try to give some constructive criticism based off how this team has played on the field. What is there not to be critical of based off what we've seen out of Colorado in the first 2 weeks? You know, there's nothing to do but criticize this team because the coaching doesn't look that good. These guys on the field don't look prepared in the majority of these games. There are misassignments, misblocking assignments on the offensive line, poor communication. These are not talent issues. These are coaching issues. Deion handpicked these players. So either he has poor player evaluation skills or either he's just not a good coach. But you just can't make excuses. Well, it's on the players. No, it's on Deion because he brought these guys in. He handpicked these dudes. It's like NFL free agency to him. So if you're handpicking dudes, they should be better than what you had last year. I refuse to say that Jordan Seaton is as bad as what Colorado had at left tackle last year. I refuse. This dude could have went any other place in America. And when Deion Sanders was snapping on the offensive line, including him in the fourth quarter against Nebraska, I saw a look in his eyes that said, you know, maybe I made a mistake coming here. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Seaton transfers elsewhere and receives better coaching. I expect more out of Deion Sanders, and I expect more out of Colorado football moving forward throughout this year. There is no reason why they should have lost 28-10 to Nebraska. They are not that bad of a team. This is a really good team. But they're being held back to lackluster coaching. Being a good motivational speaker and one of the best for these dudes off the football field is admirable. And it's respectable. And I respect Deion for that. But at the same time, nobody cares about what you're doing for the community. Nobody cares about all of the revenue that you're bringing in for Colorado. All of that is great, but none of that is going to last if Colorado continues to lose in the fashion that they did to Nebraska. Eventually, people are going to stop tuning in to watch a poor product. Nobody wants to continue to support a team that is constantly garbage every single week and looks unprepared and underperforms. You know, it's just disappointing, and it's a slap in the face to the people like me that are actually rooting for Deion Sanders to succeed, that he continues to do the same thing week in and week out and get the same results. This is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Remember, wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. I'm going to stay live for like 2 minutes to see if anybody wants to call in. The number is 904-835-5927. So for anybody that wants to call in, you can go ahead, call in. The number is on the screen. So I'm going to be live for 2 more minutes for anybody that wants to call in and get your take off. I'm also posting in the chat too. Nodule for all right, so this is the number for anybody that wants to call in. You can go ahead, call in, give your take. And we're going to stay live for about 2 more minutes to see if anybody wants to call in. Tomorrow, I definitely will be doing the dedicated call-in show, though. I do expect people to call in tomorrow. We're going to be going live as soon as Bills-Dolphins ends. Yo, you're on the line with JT Sports Live. What's going on? I appreciate you for always supporting, man. It means a lot to me. I appreciate you for supporting.
There was the whole thing in the summer about them wanting to hire someone to oversee Nathaniel Hackett at that position, and then Nathaniel Hackett still. Yeah, so I don't see why everyone loves Aaron Rodgers so much, and it might be more of a personal bias just because it frustrates me how he messes with words and what they mean.
I feel like when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, you know, people are caught up in like the nostalgia of Aaron Rodgers. They think about what he used to be with the Green Bay Packers. They asked their head coach, and this is a franchise that is starving for not just a playoff win, but they're just starving for something to be optimistic about. It's kind of like the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
You know, they've been down for so long. If they would have gotten Aaron Rodgers, they would have felt the same way. And last year, with him only playing 3 plays, we didn't even get to see him throw a single pass. Like, it was a lot of disappointment last year. So for the Jets organization, you know, like, they know how much pressure is riding on them this year. And they know that it all comes down to the play of Aaron Rodgers. And for the fan base, they want it to work out because they're tired of always being let down. Like, nobody wants to continuously support a team where you've been watching the team for 2-3 decades and all they've done is let you down. It's kind of like the Los Angeles Chargers. If you see how people are talking about Jim Harbaugh, like, Chargers fans is like, oh man, like, Jim Harbaugh is such an awesome coach. I've been a fan of this team for 2-3 decades, and this is the first time I've ever felt this level of confidence. And they probably beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's...
I would be worried about his injury and other injuries, just that much play in that short period of time. Oh, did it cut out?
Nah, like, I heard you. I'm just trying to get the audio right. But
oh, okay.
I mean, with the injuries, like, I'm not too concerned about him being able to stay healthy. Like, the chances of him suffering another injury that we saw him sustain, that magnitude is pretty slim to none. Yeah, he is up there in age, but at the same time, he's a Hall of Fame caliber player. And players like him do deserve the benefit of a doubt based off what they've done through their career. It's not like he was Russell Wilson his final season in Green Bay. It kind of was like, the worst season of his career from an Aaron Rodgers standpoint. But, I still think that from a durability standpoint, with them improving the offensive line, he should be okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm so interested to see how all this unfolds with the Jets, especially if he stays healthy, because I really want to see how it plays out with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, because that was a shame to miss that last year. And I also just have to say, because I don't think Russell Wilson was ever that great of a quarterback, and maybe most people know that and just don't say it so much, but the Seahawks that he played with were such an amazing team. And whenever I'd watch him play, he never passed that eye test. Like, his stats would be great and the team was doing amazing, but that defense really carried them. And I don't think he was ever that good of a quarterback. I think he just had an...
man, we lost you. My bad. You can call back in, Kate Rome. My bad. I accidentally pressed something. My fault. I'll call you back. Alright.
Call from Kate.
Yo, my fault. We lost you for a second. But yeah, I agree with what you were saying. Like, I do believe that Russell Wilson was pretty good. I do feel he is going to be a future first ballot Hall of Famer. But I do agree with you to the point where it's like, I do believe that Russell Wilson got a little bit too much credit for the success Seattle had. And from listening to a lot of former teammates and Marshawn Lynch talk about what happened during that Super Bowl against the Patriots, where we all remember it's the one, they don't give it to Marshawn. Like, a lot of people feel it was a lot of politics involved in that because they didn't want a guy like Marshawn Lynch to have the image that he had, and with him, not talking to the media that whole entire season. They didn't want to have somebody of his image winning Super Bowl MVP, and they wanted Russell Wilson to win it. They wanted him to have that shine. And, after that Super Bowl, Russell Wilson pretty much broke up the Legion of Boom because, like, they wanted to have a players-only meeting at some point during that next season following that Super Bowl loss. And Pete Carroll said, y'all can have this meeting, but leave Russ out of it. You feel me? And everybody was like, okay, so y'all going to give Russell Wilson this preferential treatment. You're going to treat him differently from everybody else. And from that point on, everybody just lost respect in the locker room for Pete Carroll. And, Russell Wilson kind of was like, he was a little conceited. Because to play quarterback, you got to be able to get along with people. Like, you got to be somewhat relatable. You feel me? And Russell Wilson
Yeah.
is one of those dudes where he didn't really relate to everybody in a sense. Like, he wasn't like a bad person. Like, he didn't have like the same things that people accuse Shadeur of. It's just that, you know, he had a hard time relating to people. And, you know, for somebody like Marshawn Lynch trying to get a hold of him, and you got to go through a representative to talk to him, it kind of definitely set people off the wrong way towards him. And then he gets to Denver. You know, he had his own locker room, his own office separate from the team. So it's just kind of like Russell Wilson is too much of an individual to still be a great quarterback at this level. And I kind of feel like that's what held him back. Like, great player, but, you know, as a leader, probably wasn't the best in that department.
Yeah, that really came through when we saw him in Denver. I was so shocked that he left Seattle. I don't know. I hadn't been following the locker room and all that other news that closely because I didn't know about that players only meeting. But that really came out when you went to Denver. And yeah, I loved Bomani Jones. The way he talked about him was he used to be the Carlton from the Fresh Prince, and then now he's being the Carlton when he's like all cool and stuff. It doesn't communicate it well, me telling you that here. But like, yeah, he had this whole, it seemed like maybe he wanted to fit in, like with the thing about the Ciara and like a birthday party and the high knees and the airplane thing. Like, I think he's just a little bit odd maybe. And yeah, he definitely was set up as an outsider at Denver, and that was never going to work. And it's crazy he's at Pittsburgh now for the league minimum, or the 1 million, whatever. It is really wild. I never thought he'd end up there. But yeah, I never knew he was that outsider type of guy when he was playing at Seattle. Like, there, everybody just loved it because I was living there at the time. It was Legion of Boom, Beast Mode, and like, just, we finally won a Super Bowl. And yeah.
And what was crazy about the way the Seattle situation ended was that it pretty much came down to Russell Wilson saying, hey, like, it's either me or Pete Carroll. You feel me? And, you know, when he kind of crossed the line there, Pete Carroll's like, man, like, your ass can go. You feel me? And then you see they had success with Geno Smith the following season because, like, Pete Carroll, when he got, I ain't gonna say he got fired, but he kind of did pretty much. Like, he kind of just got too old. You feel me? Like, he was still a good head coach in terms of being able to motivate you. Like, people always say, like, one thing about Pete Carroll, like, he was always happy. Like, he'll never make you feel down on yourself. You feel me? Like, he's always gonna make you feel like you're a better player than what you are. But, you know, like, there was a stretch when Russell Wilson kind of was carrying Seattle offensively because the defenses were always inept. The offensive lines were not really that good, but that's because Pete Carroll had so much of a say. And, you know, the personnel, who they drafted, who they signed in free agency. So when, like, the general manager, I believe his name is John Snyder, threatened to leave and go to Detroit, that's when Seattle's owners and the guys above him say, you know, like, we're going to let him run the team. Pete, you just coach. And that's how you got the team that you have now. And, you know, with that trade, originally Denver didn't even want Russell Wilson. Like, they wanted Aaron Rodgers. That's why they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, so it's like they couldn't get Aaron Rodgers. So it was like, okay, we just going to get Russ, and that's the next best thing. But, you know, you look at Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh right now, like, people kind of said the same stuff he was doing in Denver, Seattle, he was kind of doing with Pittsburgh. Like, He it's not that he didn't get along with the guys in the locker room, but he got along more with Mike Tomlin than he did the other players in the locker room. Meanwhile, you see, like, how people talk about Justin Fields. Like, you see the way the players, you know, look at Justin Fields. Like, you can see, like, it's some admiration there. You can see that, you know, like, they really like Justin Fields. With Russell Wilson, it's like, he's a cool guy, but it's like, you're going to play harder for somebody who you relate more to, who you got more in common with, and somebody who you got a better connection with, versus a guy who kind of is like a celebrity quarterback in a sense. You know, he had like his own like guys around him when he got to Denver. He had his own paparazzi. You know, like, Russell Wilson's a cool dude, good person. I felt like he had a pretty good player. Like, when I think of my childhood, like, I always think of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, because, you know, like, those were the most dominant quarterbacks that I've seen growing up. But Now looking back on it, it's kind of a little bit disappointing how Russell Wilson's career is coming to an end because, like, most people are probably going to think of Russell Wilson for his final 3-4 years in the league instead of thinking about the Russell Wilson that we saw during his prime in Seattle.
Yeah, yeah. I was so shocked that he left Seattle. But then hearing all this stuff out of the locker room, it makes sense in hindsight. And I'm surprised more people don't talk about the Broncos wanting Aaron Rodgers first, because that also was setting up Russell just to not succeed at all, because he was their second choice. Kind of like when Brock Purdy was told by Shanahan that they were going to try to get Brady, but if they couldn't, that Purdy should still be the starter. Like, I think that undermined some of his success, even though they did really well last season. But yeah, I think that really affects, how people succeed when they aren't the first choice and they know it.
Yeah, like like just when Russell Wilson got traded to Denver, everybody was like, "Oh man, like Russ is the missing piece. They're going to be Super Bowl contenders." And like at first, I was like, "Yeah,"
I
but
couldn't believe that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the more you get into it, it kind of was like the New York Jets last year. Like they just felt too good to be true. It's like you felt like something was bound to go wrong.
Yeah, I was surprised more people didn't learn from the Russell Wilson Broncos Let's Ride the way that turned out, to like maybe hold back a little bit with the Jets, because yeah, that felt like the same thing. And with Nathaniel Hackett there too, like super
So
similar.
I want to ask you before I let you go. How good do you think the Jets are going to be this year? Like, how far do you see them going? You think they're going to be a playoff team, or you think they more like 8-9-ish, 9-8? They missed out on the playoffs, but barely.
I think they missed out, but barely, because I think people are underestimating the Patriots, because they might have gotten lucky with the Bengals. But I remember when Mike Florio said last season when Buffalo played the Patriots, this was basically a week off, and then they lost to the Patriots. So I think the Patriots might do better than people expect. And I don't know, I think Miami also might pull out in front too. But I don't know, it all depends, because Miami kind of fell apart towards the end of last season. And if Tua can stay healthy again. But yeah, I don't know, I think they just miss it, but I think they could make it too, especially if Rodgers can manage to stay healthy. Like, it should be a tight race, I think, in that division.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, when it comes to the Patriots, like, I don't know, like, I don't think they'll be that good. But at the same time, like, you do make a good point. Like, if Gerard Mayo, because he was the coach in waiting, and if he is as good as what they expect them to be, like, this Patriots team could be a lot similar to that Brian Flores team we saw in Miami. I remember his first year, like his first game, they got blew out by the Ravens. They got blown out by a couple of teams, but they traded away a few guys, and they ended up winning 6 games. And then, they kind of overachieved the next 2 years. So it's like, I could definitely see the Patriots maybe overachieving. Like, they do have a really good defense. I don't think Joe Burrow is that bad. Like, I just think that, they showed up that day. It's week 1, things happen, but the Patriots definitely one of those organizations that, like, it seems like from a structural standpoint, they wouldn't make any moves that they weren't confident had a high chance of being able to work. So I could see a world where maybe New England ends up winning like 6-7 games. They take people by storm, because, I mean, like, the offensive line is bad. The receivers are pretty good to me. I like Ramondre Stevenson. It just comes down to, like, the quarterback play and, how good that defense is going to be. But, yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with that, and listen, like, I came close to changing my prediction on the Jets. Like, I didn't even know if they were going to be a playoff team. I was going back and forth, but I just was kind of like, like, I got a 10-7. I'm going to see if they go 10-7. But it's like, if they lose to Tennessee this week, then, yeah, I'm probably going to have to be out on them, man. You can't be losing to Will Levis Mayo, man.
Yeah, that would not be good. I am not a Levis believer. I'm sure he's a great dude, but he just makes a lot of poor decisions. Like, there was a game in particular where he blocked a dude well into the end zone. Like, the play was over, and he took a really hard hit And he just does things like that a lot. And if they lose to the Titans, that's not going to be good.
Yeah, man. But man, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate all the support that you show the channel. And I hope to look forward to you speaking to you again when we open up the lines to call in again in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, thanks so much for the show, the content. I'm such a diehard football fan. This is the content I've been starving for. And I could probably talk your ear off for a very long time about football. But thanks so much for doing this call-in. It's awesome to get to talk to you. Love your show. It's really awesome. Thanks so much for the hard work you do to make awesome content.
I appreciate you for calling in, and I hope you have a good, wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Yeah, you too, man. Absolutely. Thanks again. You're doing awesome. Have a great day, man.
You too. That was our girl, Kate Roan. Appreciate her for calling in. Appreciate all the support and everything that she does to help support the channel and the content. If anybody else wants to call in, I know my guy M Spark's been wanting to chat for a minute. I got a couple of other people that have been wanting to call in and talk the stuff. We'll be live for at least another minute or so, and if anybody else wants to call in, but if not, we'll just end it after a minute. I know my guy M Sparks probably got some things he want to get off, and I know there's a few other people on here. King Malik, Robert Turner probably want to call in also. So we'll be live for at least one more minute if anybody wants to call in. Numbers on the screen, 904-834-5927. And if you can't call in tonight, remember we will be live tomorrow after the Dolphins and the Bills play. We'll be doing our live reaction and call-in show after the game concludes. So we'll be live for one more minute. My guy said, I'll try to hit you up after Thursday night game, oh boy. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, all right, man. Nobody else is calling in. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to this episode. We will be live again tomorrow after Dolphins Bills Thursday night game with another call-in show, live reaction. I appreciate